Hi. So if you wanna look this way towards the webcam here for a minute, I would just like to introduce everybody. So, as you know, I'm Deirdre Walsh, Activism Coordinator in Amnesty Ireland, and we're delighted to have Mariana with us today to speak about our case, one of the Right for Right cases this year. And Mariana, you might be able to see in everybody around the room here, we've all the cases up on the wall and we have big boxes to fill up with letters. So this lovely group of secondary school activists and students are in with us today from 3 secondary schools. We have Santa Sabina, we have Presentation College, and we have Loretta on the Green. And these are all schools we work with in Amnesty International and who do Right for Rights every year. So it's really important for us to be back together in person today after COVID-19. It's the first school year that we've been able to gather together in person and learn about the cases together and write letters together. And we'll be posting them all off in January. So yeah, we're really looking forward to hearing your story, Mariana, and taking action for you. Yeah, so I think I'll hand it over to Maria now.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. This is Maria from Amnesty Interpretation Unit, and I will be speaking in English right now. I just wanted to briefly remind you that this is a hybrid multilingual meeting, and today we have live interpretation into English and Spanish. So for everything to work well, we kindly ask you to speak slowly, clearly, and loudly for the participants to hear you well, and also for the interpretation team to be able to follow. At the same time, I just wanted to remind you that interpretation into other languages always takes a few seconds. So we thank you in advance for being patient and for giving the interpreters the time to finish their renditions. You will see that you will need to allow for a brief pause at the end of your speeches so that the interpretation team can also finish, and everything should be working smoothly. If you have any technical issue, we will be here to support you, and you can let us know via private chat on Zoom. That's all from us. I wish you all a very fruitful meeting. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maria. Great. So now I welcome Mariana to speak. You're very welcome to join us here in Dublin and Amnesty Ireland, Mariana.
Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo están
Hello,
todos?
everyone. How are you? How are you today?
Aquí estamos, como lo
Well,
decías, por la campaña Escribe por los
we are
Derechos.
here together to work in the Right for Rights campaign. I would like to talk very briefly about the context we are enduring in Paraguay, we transgender people.
¿Se entiende?
Sorry,
Can you hear me?
Sorry, Mariana, just 1 second. We just need to, I think, switch the audio so that the English translation is coming through. Just 1 second. Thanks so much. So the English translation, maybe the English translation needs to be on that one then. Apologies for stopping you in mid conversation, Mariana. But I think if you want to try again, we just have the English translation on the other channel now as well. So hopefully that will work.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Mi nombre
Of
es
course. Hello again. My name is Mariana. I'm a human rights defender and activist in Paraguay. I specifically work with transgender people.
Como lo decía,
Well,
un poco de historia.
as I was saying before, I would like to give you some background. I've been working for the rights of transgender people in Paraguay for 11 years.
El motivo por el cual estoy aquí es
Today, I am here to talk about my name change. In Paraguay, transgender people suffer a lot of violence. our human rights, such as the right to education, to healthcare, or to a decent life and house, are not ensured, nor it is the right to our self-identity guaranteed. Therefore, in 2016, in the framework of a project, we applied for our legal name to be changed. I did this together with Irene Rotella, one of my colleagues. We had an agreement with lawyers in Paraguay and with other human rights organizations in the country. We started to gather the documents that we needed. We wanted to submit 10 claims, but we could only submit 2 at the end, and Eden's and my own case were selected. In 2017, a positive ruling was made for Eden. My case was a bit more tricky. Can you hear me well? Can you hear me well?
Very well. Thank you.
Bueno, entonces a mí sí me pidió la jueza que iba a
All
determinar en
right.
primera
So in my case, the judge from the first instant court asked me to provide a psychiatric document. Therefore, I had to go through a very difficult and violent process. I had to talk about my life. I had to provide intimate details. I had to go through psychological therapy. There, I had to explain whether my family members had raped me, whether someone had raped me. Well, this was very violent for me. I was more or less prepared, but if I weren't, this could mean a trauma for me. Basically, they wanted to find a traumatic event that could explain the reason why I was applying for my name to be changed. Therefore, I suffered a lot of violence. Then the judge ruled in my favor, and I was allowed to have my legal name changed. This was in 2018. In 2018, the Civil Prosecutor's Office appealed. Therefore, Iren's case and my own case became more difficult. Our cases went to the Court of Appeals. Then, in 2019, the magistrates sent a note to the Supreme Court. This note was all about asking how we wanted to proceed. This is the situation right now. Up until now, we don't have a definite answer. This is a form of discrimination. People in Paraguay are allowed to change their names by making reference to a just cause. There's an article in the Civil Code that allows us to do so. Kimberly will talk about this later on. Basically, everyone is allowed to change their names by making reference to a just cause. Let me give you an example. For instance, in Paraguay, many parents call their children Herculano. Then in the future, maybe that child wants to have their name changed because sometimes they suffer bullying at school because of their name. So once they become of legal age, they can apply for having their name changed, and then the judge decides. However, we are not allowed to do so just because we are trans women. We suffer violence, and we are not allowed to change our name and to have our self-perceived identity reflected on our name. Panambi, the other organization, was working on this project, but the project ended, and then Eden started knocking at other doors. We were desperate, and we didn't know how to continue following up on our case to have our name changed. Then Amnesty Paraguay got in touch with us. We spoke to Rosalia, who is part of Amnesty Paraguay, the director. Therefore, we started working on a campaign that is, I am real, my name should be legal. Then we started becoming more relevant in the country. Now, Amnesty International has selected us for this campaign. Every year, 10 cases from all around the world are chosen to gather letters from different countries showcasing international solidarity. I hope that our situation will change. Sending letters and writing change lives. I know this because of Herman, one of my colleagues. I don't know if you know him, but I got in touch with him, and his story inspired me a lot. Now I am very happy to be part of this campaign. We suffer violence here in Paraguay. For our rights to be fulfilled, having our identity recognized is the first step. So, well, I don't know if you have any questions right now. If so, please feel free to jump in. And if not, I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Kimberly.
Thank you so much, Mariana, for sharing your story. It was really, really great to understand more and to understand the situation, and that you are one of these cases that we can take action on is really important to us. I'm just going to check if there's any questions right now, or if we'll move straight to Kimberly. So just one moment. Hi, Mariana. We have a question from Sana here. Sana, do you want to wave your hand just so she can see you? Yeah. Yeah, she said, did you ever feel scared during this process?
La verdad que miedo
Well,
nunca.
the truth is that I have never been scared. I felt stronger and stronger as we continued working on this. My main pillar is my mother. She's always had my back. When I had problems, when I was not strong enough, she always supported me. She always encouraged me to continue, to keep working. My mom, well, she's a great source of support for me. She speaks Guayani, and she always says, "You're strong. You can do this." Well, my mom is very strong, and she always supports me. She always has my back in good times and in bad times. She supports me at all times. She recognizes me as Mariana, and she fights for me, for my own identity, for the state to recognize my own identity as well. And she's my biggest source of support and hope.
I'm really glad to hear you such a strong support in your mother. So yeah, that's great to know. And that you've drawn on that strength through your journey as well. Thanks so much, Mary. Mariana, Heather has asked if you found it easier to come out as transgender having this support in your mother. So did your mother's support make it easier for you to tell people that you are transgender?
Trans?
Eh, la verdad que yo la transición la empecé muy
Well,
temprano.
the truth is,
14 años.
I started transitioning at the age of
En un
14.
momento, salí de mi casa.
At that
Porque
point,
vengo de una familia muy
you know,
humilde.
I come from a very humble family.
Ejercí el trabajo sexual muy temprana edad.
At a very young age, I started
Pero
working
sí
as a
que,
sexual worker.
la verdad que mi mamá siempre estuvo al lado
My
mío. Más
mum
bien,
always
mis hermanos
supported
mayores
me.
fueron los que en un principio
My
eran
older
los que estaban,
brothers, at the beginning, would
por la situación.
discriminate me because
Uno
of the
está así
situation I
porque
was
su
going
cultura
through,
misma, ¿verdad? Porque
and
me
also
decían
because of
que
the
no iba a
society we
tener
were living in.
un hermano trans,
They
o
were
sea,
saying
en
that they
aquel
would
tiempo
never
mi
have
mamá,
a
como
trans
ellos ya eran
brother.
mayores, le dijo que ellos tendrían que
And
salir
my
de casa, que
mum
ella no me dejaría sola.
was
Entonces
older,
mi
of
mamá
course,
siempre
and
estuvo
she
conmigo desde el
always said that she
principio
would never
y
let me
siempre conté
alone.
con su apoyo más que nunca
I
porque ella
always
sabe
had
que
her support, and I
siento
still
como que
do.
soy la más vulnerable entre todos
She
sus
feels
hijos
that I'm the most
y
vulnerable of her
está siempre
children, and
acompañándola
that's why she's
en todo, ¿verdad?
always very supportive.
Fue algo difícil en el
It
momento
was a
de
difficult
transición,
time
más
for
que nada en
me.
la parte de educación, ya que
It was especially
pues yo
difficult to
iba a
transition
terminar
when
la
it comes
carrera
to
y
education,
dar lo
because
mejor por
I
mi madre,
always dreamt of
el
studying,
cual el Estado me
and
prácticamente me negó
the
porque
government
al
would
empezar esa
reject
transición fui
that.
expulsada de la
So
misma
I would be denied
a los
education
16 años.
at the age of 16
Después de
because
muchos
of my
años,
condition.
15 años, volví a retomar
And 15 years later,
gracias
I
que
could
tuve una
go
capacitación,
back
fui
to studying.
capacitada, fui
I
entrenada
received
en temas de derechos
training.
humanos. En aquel tiempo
I
yo
received
también,
training
como ser
on
humano,
human
tenía derecho a
rights.
esa.
I
Yo
was
no podía negar
empowered.
el
At
derecho
the
a la
time,
educación.
I didn't know I
Y
couldn't be
bueno,
denied the
hoy en día
rights
ya
and access to
terminé y
education.
estoy en
But
proceso
I
de mi
learned that.
tesis. Gracias a toda
Today, I am
la
completing my
adversidad que
thesis.
sufrí, hoy soy
And
fuerte
despite
y
all the
estoy
situations I
tratando
went
de
through, I
ayudar a
think
vencer
that
todo lo
today I'm in a
todos los
positive
tabúes
situation and I could,
y la discriminación que sufre, pero
you
sé
know,
que no fue
talk
fácil y
about all these
no es fácil en
taboo
Paraguay. Pasé
topics
muchas
that were surrounding me.
violencias, tanto
I
de
have
parte
been
de
able to
compañeros,
talk about
de
violence.
profesores,
I have had
y
the
en aquel
support
tiempo
of
cuando
colleagues,
yo
professors.
empecé nuevamente a retomar
When I decided to start
mi bachillerato,
studying again,
uno de los senadores nos llamó
I
lácra.
had
Muchos de mis
to
compañeros se burlaban
go
de
through
los cursos, me
high
decían
school
eso, incluso me
education,
querían hasta
right?
a pegar.
And very often
Y
there
así,
would be
pero hoy en
people who
día,
would be disregarding
gracias a
me
esa experiencia y
completely
a
because of
esos,
my condition.
a
But
esas
I think I
vivencias,
went through the
hoy estoy
experience,
más fuerte que
and
nunca para luchar
thanks to
contra todo.
everything I've been through, I am stronger than ever to fight against anything.
Thanks, Mariana. It's really yeah, it really struck me how learning about your rights can be so powerful, learning that you do have the right to education and you do have the right to healthcare and all of that, so that knowledge is power, you know. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Perhaps at this point we'll move on to if Kimberly has a few words to say. And then we can have some time for more questions as well then after that.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Espero
Hello,
que
everyone.
todos se encuentren muy bien.
I hope that
Yo
everyone is
soy
doing
Kimberly
well.
Ayala,
This is
soy
Kimberly Ayala. I am a lawyer and an activist. I am an activist for human rights. I would like to start talking about the following. I'm where I am because Eden cannot be here with us. She's one of the rights holders. She's part of the Right for Rights campaign, and she couldn't join us for health issues. And that's why I am here to support my colleague Mariana. And also because I am the lawyer that's working on 3 of the cases that we're currently working on in Paraguay for the name change. So I will focus on those, and I will tell you a bit about how we are doing in this regard, because Mariana has already talked to you about the context of transgender people in Paraguay, the extreme situations of violence that they suffer. They are the most vulnerable part of the population, and their rights are continuously disregarded. In Paraguay, any person can ask for a change in their name according to Article 42 of the Civic Code in Paraguay. Any person, regardless of their sex, religious beliefs, can change their name. However, that right is not applicable to transgender people. This is because there's discrimination by authorities in the judiciary and also authorities working at the public prosecutor office. Authorities do not want to comply with Article 42, and they do not comply with Article 25 of the Constitution. That article states that each person is free to build an identity for themselves. So these are the rights that we have in Paraguay at the moment. However, authorities do not comply with the law. Based on their personal beliefs, they do not allow transgender people to access these rights. Therefore, as you can see, this is unfair, and therefore authorities are violating human rights of transgender people in Paraguay. 2 of the cases we're working on are Mariana and Irene's cases. We have used all means available to us already. That means there's nothing else the judiciary can do for Mariana's case at the moment, because we are not receiving a response to their requests. Given that we have been working on these cases for 6 years, and considering that the judiciary need to rule either against or in favor of a cause within 6 years, we proceeded to file a complaint at the Committee for Human Rights of the UN. So nowadays, there's an international complaint filed for Irene and Mariana. And we hope that in 2 or 3 years' time, we will have the UN's response. We know that they will rule in favor of Irene and Mariana, and they will ensure that the rights of transgender people in Paraguay are respected. However, this ruling does not guarantee anything, because this ruling is non-binding for the Paraguayan government. This is because Paraguay can follow the ruling or not. At the same time, Paraguay has other international rules and legislation in place, and this has to do with the right to self-determination. For example, the Paraguayan government complies with the San Jose de Costa Rica Compact legislation. There are also rules saying that judges need to rule in favor or against cases, but they need to use legal names, because that's a basic need. However, authorities in Paraguay do not comply with these requirements. And we still see that since the time of the dictatorship, human rights are still violated in Paraguay.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. It's really it's really saddening to hear that the authorities don't abide by the laws, and that you're doing everything you can, including going to the UN, which is obviously very important, at the very least at a symbolic level, to get that recognized at the UN. I'm One of the questions I have, which I think that everyone will be interested here in the room as well, is, do you think that writing letters to the authorities in Paraguay will make a difference? Because obviously you've exhausted lots of other avenues. So, as part of Right for Rights, there could be thousands, if not more, letters from around the world sent to Paraguay. So what influence or impact do you think this will have for Irene, Mariana and others in the same situation? And this could be for Mariana or for Kimberly to answer.
Sí, de hecho que sí, sirve.
Yes, of course, that's helpful. Any request by a person is helpful. That's what makes the government feel that they need to abide by the law. And this is extremely important. Moreover, this is a great moral support for transgender people going through this situation in Paraguay. So I would say that, yes, indeed, this is helpful from all points of view. As moral support, this is also helpful for to raise awareness and to make sure that authorities know that in other countries, these rights are respected. We see that authorities fear this situation that transgender people are going through, but there's no reason for that. And we need to make sure that authorities understand that human rights are respected. So receiving these letters will help us put pressure on the government and the authorities so that they comply with fundamental human rights. Apologies, if I may. I just wanted to say that I'm absolutely sure that writing letters can change people's lives. As I was saying to you, I was talking to this colleague, Germán, and based on Germán's experience, I am absolutely sure that having letters and having the solidarity of so many people can lead to a change in Paraguay. I am sure that the government will feel pressed to do something about this, and we will have all the support we need, because we won't feel that we are alone. We will feel that we are supported internationally to create our own lives and to enjoy our human rights, because we are human beings above all, and that's extremely important. So I would like to say this to everyone in the room: if you write letters, you can change people's lives, and you can change our lives by sending a very short letter to the authorities in Paraguay and by signing the request and the petition for our name change, which is part of the Right for Rights campaign. So I would very much like to encourage everyone to write in this regard so that colleagues and myself, Irene, and other colleagues who are also part of this movement can enjoy their rights, or can have access at least to the rights they deserve. Besides our sex, our gender, our sexual orientation, I think what's most important is that we are human beings, we have rights and we have duties. and we need to remember that. And thank you all in advance.
Thank you, Mariana and Kimberly. And that's really motivating for me, and I'm sure for everyone in the room, that we can push pen to paper and we can write words that may have a big impact, that will have a big impact, especially if lots and lots of letters are sent. So that's what we're going to be doing straight after this call, writing our words and posting them. So thank you so much for that motivation. I'm just going to check now if there's any other questions in the room. I have another question. I'm just curious about the LGBTQI transgender community, in Paraguay. So is there a strong community there, a strong community of solidarity? For example, is there a Pride March every year and things like that? Is there a community around you in Paraguay that's supportive?
Yes, indeed. We have a LGBT IQ plus coalition. This coalition is made up of different organizations and individuals. Also, we have the Pride March on the 30th of September. This takes place every year. Transgender people are part of the feminist movement in Paraguay. We work together with our feminist colleagues and we protest for our rights all together. We are never alone. We are always supported by the population. We have a very good relationship with the LGBTQA plus coalition and with the feminist movement in the country. So indeed, we work together with all of them.
Yo creo que es importante también contarles.
So yes, if I may, I think it is important to note that in Paraguay, there is no law against all forms of discrimination. So therefore, in Paraguay, discriminating against people is still legal. We need to pass such a law so that our communities can have a decent life. We have to turn discrimination into a crime. By doing so, people and organizations won't be able to exercise violence against us. Also, there are different human rights organizations in Paraguay. Mariana was part of PANAMBI, a human rights organization that works for transgender rights in the country. We also have the coordinator for human rights in Paraguay. We also have Amnesty Paraguay, etc. So there are several human rights organizations in the country that protect transgender people in the country and that help them to fully exercise their rights. Also, in terms of violence, for instance, in 2019, there was a group that wanted to organize a peaceful assembly, a peaceful protest in a city that is far away from the capital. And this group suffered attacks from religious and political groups. They just wanted to organize a peaceful gathering for the rights of LGBTI plus communities. So they were not able to peacefully demonstrating. This is a right according to our constitution. You can imagine how far these groups go to prevent fundamental rights, such as the right to peaceful assembly. There are groups, pro-life groups, that are gaining power and influence among civil society. These groups exercise violence against the LGBTI community. The group that was peacefully demonstrating suffered attacks. They suffered a lot of violence. Stones were thrown against them, and they couldn't even demonstrate. A festival was planned to take place on that day, but this festival couldn't take place because of the huge amount of violence that the group suffered. There was a parallel demonstration of pro-life and pro-family groups that wanted to prevent the demonstration in favor of LGBTI communities to take place. This was very unfortunate, and we hope that such a situation won't take place again. This leads to a very serious trauma. People can even commit suicide because of this. So, as you can see, this situation is extreme. This is the reason why we need international solidarity. This is the reason why we need your help. Therefore, we invite you to sign this petition, to work on the Right for Rights campaign, to send your letters. Please feel free to open Amnesty International's website and to sign our petition for the right to have our own identity.
Thank you for that, Kimberly. And it's great to hear about that there is, a strong community around you, Mariana, in Paraguay and the Pride March. But I'm really shocked actually to hear there's no laws against discrimination, and that so many communities can't peacefully protest and exercise their right to freedom of expression safely. So I really hope, that highlighting your case, Mariana, will also bring wider awareness of the wider situation in Paraguay as well, which is very important. So I'm just going to check if there's any final questions from the room. Okay, I have two questions. One is from Olivia. Olivia, do you want to wave at the camera? Olivia is wondering why Pride happens in September in Paraguay. It actually takes place in June in Ireland, but I'm not sure. Maybe it's always different dates everywhere in the world. But is there any special reason why it happens in September? And then Manus, do you want to turn and wave at the camera? Manus, there's another question. What is the dominant religion in Paraguay, and does the church have a lot of power over how laws are created or how things are policed in Paraguay?
All right. Well, the Pride March takes place normally on the 29th of September. This is because, well, in Paraguay, we have a street called Street Palma, Palma Street. On the 29th of September, around 1890, more or less, or 1980 rather, people from the LGBTI community marched through this street and they were arrested. Back then, Paraguay was having a dictatorship from Alfredo Stroessner. He was a dictator, and during that time, people from the LGBTI community were arrested. They were obliged to then march so that they felt ashamed of their condition. Back then, Bernardo Aranda was killed. He was a journalist. He worked in a radio that was called Comuneros. He was brutally murdered at his home, and he was then burned. Bernardo Aranda was allegedly gay. Therefore, after that, gay people were chased in the city. People that seemed to be gay, that were said to be gay, were persecuted. They were arrested, they were taken to the police office, they were tortured, and they were obliged to say who was gay. If they knew other people that were gay, they were obliged to bring those people forward. People were tortured to say who were gay. This community was persecuted, and people from the LGBTI community were chased. So 108 people were arrested, gay and lesbian people. They were then obliged to march through the street in a walk of shame, so that they felt indeed ashamed. We never knew who murdered Bernardo. The rights of the LGBTI community were violated. This community has always been very vulnerable. Back then, they suffered extreme violence. Well, this is the reason why the Pride March takes place on the 29th of September, because we commemorate what happened back then, what happened during this march and before the march. Well, I would like to answer the second question. The government is theoretically secular. However, the Catholic religion has a very strong influence within the state and within the government. This group sometimes spreads fake news, false information. There are pro-life and pro-family groups in Paraguay, for instance. Those are fundamentalist religious groups. They spread fake news. They make reference to a gender ideology, and they use their speech to prevent us from changing our names. They go against the rights of LGBTI communities. They join our marches on the side. They join us with the Bible, for instance, and they could tell us that we are Satan, that we are the evil, that they would like to change our conditions. Of course, we always take a peaceful approach, and we just ignore them. We ignore their claims. Unfortunately, indeed, religion has a strong influence in Paraguay. The government grants those groups resources to march, for instance. Quite recently, I don't know if you've been following the news, pro-life and pro-family groups in Paraguay marched against the change on the educational system. This was a reform that was supported by the European Union. So, fundamentalist religious groups hold a march with the following slogan: "Please leave my children alone." Well, this was a transformation of the educational system. They didn't like the word transformation because of the trans bit. So they used this to march against the reform. This showcases the level of distress that we suffer. These groups spread fake news about transgender communities in Paraguay. They defend traditional families, families made up of a father, a mother, and their children. They do not recognize different families. Our country is very violent, very patriarchal, and very traditional. Well, we are only granted the right to die. In Latin America, transgender people live 35 years on average. And this is because the conditions we are submitted to, our rights are not ensured. We are on the margins. The government doesn't grant any rights for us. We are at risk of being killed. Up until now, we are only granted the right to die, as I was saying.
Kimberly, thank you for giving us more insight into why the Pride March is in September and to commemorate such a violent event. But I hope that it can be flipped now, that people can march proudly and not in shame. So I hope that it can become a more joyous event. And Mariana, thank you for explaining more about the religious groups and funding they get from the government and the misinformation that they spread, and yeah, the life expectation of trans people as well in Latin America, which is very saddening to hear. And from the room here, we send you really warm wishes. And yeah, we definitely feel motivated to act on your case. Just a final question from me, as we're all in this room together as activists, and some people here are on their journey beginning to learn about what being an activist means, and about what human rights are theirs and how they can protect the rights of other people as well. I would love to hear from you, Mariana, about what being an activist means to you.
Sí. El activismo,
Right.
para mí, singular, sin
In
digamos,
my opinion,
concepto formal, el
activism is a formal concept. Activism, I would say being an activist means doing your best to fight for the rights that other people have been denied. So if a group of people are denied their rights, being an activist means doing your best to help those people and to fight against everything, despite criticism, despite the situations you might be going through, despite the resistance by the government, by the society. The idea is to fight for the rights of a person or a group of people. Being an activist and being a human rights defender implies being a person who defends solidarity. And it also implies being brave. We need to be brave and courageous to fight for the rights of others.
I think that's a really good point to end this conversation on. It's definitely something I'll take on board in my life. and in my work. And as well, just what you were saying earlier, Mariana, about us all recognizing each other as human beings first and foremost. I think that's really important to hold close to our hearts as well. So I'd just like to say thank you to everyone in the room. Do you want to give a wave to the camera here? And we're going to start some letter writing now, and I'm sure there'll be some personal messages to you as well, Mariana, as well as
Porfa.
signing the petition.
Sí, no que... justamente no,
That's exactly what I wanted to say. Thank you so much. So before we leave, I just wanted to say that I would kindly ask you to write letters, to sign the petition that will change our lives. And that's another step towards having our identity recognized. And if you can write letters, and if you can encourage your relatives, your friends, your family to write letters as well, that would be amazing, because the farther we reach, the better. And I would like to send you a huge hug and to thank you all very much for this solidarity you're having with us.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Kimberly and Maria and the translation team as well. A lot of work has gone in the background to make this happen, and to our colleagues in the Netherlands as well for their support. So thank you, everybody, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.